Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are too cute. The royal trio of children stepped out with parents Prince William and Kate Middleton.
It was supposed to be a normal Christmas celebration at Westminster Abbey but ended up shocking the whole of the UK when Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis revealed what Queen Camilla did to them. The grand halls of Westminster Abbey glowed with golden light, the warmth of the Christmas season filling every corner. It was a night of unity, of family, of gratitude. The royal family stood together at the front of the abbey, welcoming distinguished guests, each adorned in their finest holiday attire. A magnificent tree stood in the center of the grand hall, the kindness tree, a tradition initiated by the late Queen Elizabeth herself. It was decorated not with mere ornaments but with handwritten notes of gratitude, each expressing appreciation for a loved one. Guests were invited to pen their messages and tie them to the branches, creating a tapestry of heartfelt emotions. It was adorable. Prince Louis, now 6 years old, approached the tree with the boundless energy that had become his trademark. His brown hair was neatly combed, though a few strands had already broken free, dancing above his forehead as he bounced on his toes. In his small hands, he clutched a carefully folded note, written in the slightly wobbly handwriting of a child determined to make each letter perfect. "Would you like to share your message with everyone, Prince Louis?" asked the curious noblewoman, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners as she smiled at the young prince. Louis nodded enthusiastically, holding his handwritten note with great care and reading it aloud with a warm smile. "I am grateful for Charlotte, George, Mommy, Daddy, and Grandpa for always playing games with me." The guests around the tree let out soft chuckles and coos of adoration at the touching message. The young prince's innocence was heartwarming. But then, an elderly lady, as if wanting to start trouble, leaned down and asked, "What about Queen Camilla, dear? Surely she plays with you too?" The abbey fell silent. Charlotte, who had been beaming just moments ago, suddenly tensed, her gloved hands tightening at her sides. Prince George, who had been further away speaking with his grandfather, turned to look at them, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Louis's cheerful expression faltered for just a moment, still unaware of the eyes fixed upon him. He responded with the casual honesty only a child could muster. "No. She promised to play with me once, but then she said I was annoying and told me to go away." A gasp rippled through the crowd. A few guests exchanged stunned glances, while others covered their mouths in shock. The very air in the abbey seemed to still, as though holding its breath. Princess Charlotte's reaction, however, told a deeper story. She suddenly tensed, her hands gripping the edges of her red velvet dress. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her normally bright eyes darkening with an emotion too heavy for her young age. She turned to her little brother, gently tugging at his sleeve, as if silently warning him to stop speaking. As for Catherine, Princess of Wales, she quickly moved to smooth over the moment, but the damage was already done. It was too late. The truth had slipped from Louis's mouth, and now the entire United Kingdom would be desperate to know what else lay beneath the surface. The bonds within the royal family had always been complex, especially after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. King Charles had worked tirelessly to maintain unity and, more importantly, his relationship with his grandchildren by spending countless hours with them. He would often take Louis on walks through the palace gardens, teaching him the names of flowers and letting him help plant new seedlings. Charlotte would join them sometimes, her natural grace and intelligence making her the perfect student for lessons about royal history and protocol. But Queen Camilla's relationship with the children had always been different. In public, she maintained a polite distance, and the press had attributed this to respect for the memory of Princess Diana. Behind the palace walls, however, a different story was unfolding. The Christmas celebration was meant to bring the family together, yet beneath the glittering lights and polished smiles, tensions had long been simmering. Despite their royal titles, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis had always been children first, children who craved love, warmth, and playfulness. Their parents, Prince William and Princess Catherine, ensured that their childhood was as normal as possible, filled with laughter, bedtime stories, and playful chases through the palace gardens. King Charles, their grandfather, had a deep fondness for them. He would tell them enchanting stories of history and mythology and even engage in their playful antics when time allowed. It was well known that Charles adored his grandchildren. But Queen Camilla, she was different. Since becoming queen, Camilla had taken on the role of a dignified monarch, focused on royal duties and public appearances. Though she had always been cordial toward the children, she lacked the warmth that they found in other family members. While William and Catherine ensured their children were never forced into uncomfortable interactions, they had still spent time in Camilla's presence at official gatherings. For the longest time, no one suspected any tension. No one knew what lay beneath the carefully maintained royal facade, until tonight. And Charlotte's reaction, her deep knowing silence, told the world that there was more to the story. As the Christmas celebration continued, the tension inside Westminster Abbey was palpable. Charlotte kept shooting worried glances at her younger brother, while Catherine darted suspicious glances at her kids and then her husband. As for Queen Camilla, she maintained a rigid smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. King Charles appeared torn, his love for his wife warring with his concern for his grandchildren. What was meant to be a heartwarming evening of gratitude and togetherness had now become something entirely different, a moment of realization for the gathered guests, the press, and perhaps even the royal family themselves. Things were not good. The royal family seemed to want the celebration to end as quickly as possible so they could go back to pressing matters. Princess Charlotte reached for Prince Louis's hand, not wanting to let him out of her sight. It was as if she was already planning how to pull her little brother away from the storm he had unknowingly unleashed. A few feet away, Catherine, who kept looking at her kids, had gone still. Her usual poised smile faded as she met Queen Camilla's gaze. Prince William held her hand, a silent attempt to help steady her. His jaw was clenched, his expression unreadable, but the flicker of protectiveness in his eyes was unmistakable. The celebration ended, and the royal family was now alone in the halls of the palace. Queen Camilla avoided the Prince and Princess of Wales's gaze. She stood near her husband, King Charles, seeking some sort of protection. For a moment, Camilla's carefully practiced expression faltered. She glanced at Charles, whose face remained neutral, but the way he gripped his cane a little tighter did not go unnoticed by the royal guards. The room felt impossibly quiet. It was Prince George, standing a few feet away from his siblings, who decided to break the silence. The eldest of the Wales children, only 11 years old but already showing signs of the future king he would one day become, stepped forward. His steady and deliberate voice carried across the hall. "Louis didn't mean anything by it," he said simply. Catherine looked at him, then at Louis, who stood next to Charlotte. Immediately, she knew Charlotte knew better. And Louis did mean something by it. They were hiding something, and she was going to find out. The Wales siblings were close, closer than most royal siblings had been in generations. From a young age, their parents had nurtured a deep sense of unity among them, ensuring that despite the pressures of royal life, they would always have each other. Charlotte, in particular, had always been fiercely protective of her younger brother. As the middle child, she had the strength of both an elder and a younger sibling. She knew when to comfort and when to defend. And right now, as the weight of Louis's words settled over the palace, she realized this was one of those moments to defend. "Are you hiding something from me, Charlotte?" Catherine asked. "Come on, Louis, let's go to bed." "It's been a long day," Charlotte whispered, nudging him gently while avoiding her mom's gaze. But before they could move, Prince William's voice cut through the air. "Charlotte, your mother is asking you a question." The tension in the room was palpable. They all collectively held their breath, waiting for Charlotte to say something. Truth came out. "It started last year," she began, her voice small but steady. "During the summer when we visited Grandpa at the castle." William tensed. "We were playing in the gardens," she continued. "Lou was being a bit loud. He was pretending to be a knight and was running around with a stick, calling it his sword. Camilla was watching from the terrace. At first, she didn't say anything, but then she hesitated." "Then what, sweetheart?" Catherine asked, her voice filled with quiet encouragement. Charlotte exhaled. She told him to stop. She said he was too noisy and that proper royal children don't act like that. And when Louis tried to explain that he was just playing, she called him a little pest and told him to go inside. Catherine's lips parted slightly, her expression shifting from concern to something sharper. William's fingers curled into a fist. Louis, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. She said I was annoying, he murmured. I didn't mean to be. I just wanted her to play with me. Charlotte took a shaky breath. And it wasn't the only time. She never wants us around when we visit. She tells us to go play somewhere else. She never talks to us unless she has to. Then yesterday, we were playing in the garden, and she came up to us and told us not to play. Then, as we walked slowly inside, she dragged me, and I fell. George, who had been silent, spoke. I told her she was hurt, but she didn't care. Silence. A deep, heavy silence. The kind that settled between people when something unspoken had finally been put into words. Princess Catherine inhaled deeply, holding her composure even as her heart clenched at her children's words. She glanced at William. His jaw was set, his usually warm blue eyes dark with something dangerously close to anger. He had always known that Queen Camilla was distant with the children. But this was something else entirely. Why didn't you tell us before? Catherine asked gently, her hand stroking Charlotte's back in comfort. Charlotte hesitated before answering. Because. She trailed off, biting her lip. I didn't want to stress you, and it wasn't important. It's just how she is. It was also my fault for falling down. I shouldn't have. It's not ladylike. Louis, however, had no such doubts. His young face was scrunched up in frustration. I don't like her, he blurted out loud. William exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. He had spent years learning how to navigate palace politics, how to keep the peace for the sake of the family. But this was personal. Catherine's voice was soft but firm. My loves, listen to me, she said, looking at each of her children. You are never annoying. You are never a burden. And you should never feel like you don't belong in your own family. It's not your fault you fell. She should have nursed your wounds. Charlotte nodded slowly, while Louis leaned into his mother's warmth. William, however, remained silent for a long moment before finally speaking. This won't happen again, he said simply. Catherine looked at him, understanding exactly what he meant. This was a turning point. The next morning, the royal family was scheduled to attend the annual Christmas Day service at Sandringham. The event was meant to show unity, the royal family standing together in front of the world. But this year, things were different. And the world could feel it. The press had already latched onto Prince Louis's remark the previous day at Westminster Abbey, speculating what it might mean. Headlines ranged from mild curiosity to outright scandal. As the Wales family stepped out of their car, cameras flashed, capturing their every move. Louis held Catherine's hand, looking unusually serious. Charlotte walked beside him, casting wary glances toward the other royal members. And then there she was. The Queen. She stood next to King Charles, dressed in a regal deep green coat, her hat perfectly perched upon her styled hair. Her smile was warm for the cameras, but her eyes flickered toward William and Catherine, and then toward Charlotte and Louis. The cold stare she received from them confirmed that the siblings had told their parents everything. A silent conversation passed between them. William barely spared her a glance before guiding his family forward. And just like that, a message had been sent to the world. King Charles noticed. He always noticed. But never said a word. It wasn't the time nor the place. But for the first time in a long time, he wondered if his efforts to hold his family together were beginning to crack. Wow! No one saw that coming. Do you think the royal family will ever recover from this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. Catch you in the next one.